Hello and welcome. I'm Shani Peer. I'm the director of the Maison Française at Columbia University. And I am really delighted to welcome Emmanuel Gras, who's joining us today from Paris. He's here to talk with us about his film, A Cow's Life, or in French, Bovines ou la vraie vie des vaches, which we are showing online this week as part of our film festival called Being in the World, People and the Planet in French and Francophone Cinema. This is a film festival that is presenting 14 films over a period of 2 months. 3 of these films are being shown online, with Bovines being the first one. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's still available through this Sunday, and you can get a link by signing up on our website at maisonfrancaise.org. This festival is being presented by the Maison Française with several other co-sponsors at Columbia, including the Columbia Climate School, the Society of Fellows Heyman Center for the Arts, and Columbia's Institute for Ideas and Imagination in Paris, where Emmanuel Gras was a fellow in 2021. So we're particularly pleased to have him returning to talk with us about his film. We have some, I just wanted to mention a few of the other screenings that are coming up on Friday. This Friday, we're having an outdoor screening on the campus of Columbia on Low Library Plaza, and that is The Big Blue by Luc Besson, 1988 classic film. So we hope that some of you can come to join us for that outdoor screening. And then we have 8 other in-person screenings happening in September and October at Cowan Auditorium in Teachers College. And I think Clara will post a link in the chat that will take you to the full program of all of our events. So I'm just going to briefly introduce Emmanuel Gras, and then we will talk. I will ask him some questions to start off the conversation for 25 or 30 minutes, and then we'll save about 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. So if you do have a question, you can put it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen in French or in English, and we hope that we'll have time to get to many of the questions that are asked. We only have Emmanuel with us for about 45 minutes today, so we want to respect that time limit. So Emmanuel Gras is an innovative and award-winning French documentary filmmaker. Bovines was his first documentary film. It came out in 2011 and was selected for Acide at Cannes. And was nominated for the French Césars in 2013 for Best Documentary. Since then, he's made several other wonderful films, including 300 Hommes, which we had the pleasure of showing at the Maison Française several years ago, and Makala, which won the Critics Week Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival in 2017. And most recently, he made a documentary about the Yellow Vest movement in France titled A French Revolution. I think that was the project that you were working on while you were a fellow at the Columbia Institute for Ideas and Imagination. So Emmanuel's films have won a number of awards. They've been selected to be shown in numerous international film festivals, including the Vienna International Film Festival, New Directors, New Films in New York, TIFF in Toronto, and many more. And his films generally address social topics, and rely on a method of innovative and radical formalism. He's continually experimenting with what cinema can do, basically, and with how it can be used to treat different, very pertinent social topics. So that brings us to our discussion of today's film. Emmanuel, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And this is such a beautiful, remarkable film, and it is an interesting subject to choose for a first documentary. So I just wanted to start off by asking you why you wanted to make a film on this topic, and perhaps also what you were thinking about when you approached this subject. What were you perhaps inspired by, or what were you reacting against in terms of how similar films have been made in the past? So that's where we can start.
Yes, thank you for the invitation. And yes, that's right. It's a strange subject for our first film, or for a film in general. But it's difficult to say the beginning, the real beginning of the project. But maybe it's because I was filming in countryside in France and for another documentary, and I began to observe the cows evolving in the fields, and also cows looking at me. So because we were traveling for a film by walks, and I noticed that sometimes, even every time that we were walking through cow field, they were looking at us, and really with curiosity. And so the first thing was, okay, after some time, I began to ask myself, okay, what are they looking at? Is it me? Is it someone? Do they observe me as another animal, as a human, as someone who is looking like their breeder, or what is in their mind? And that began with this mutual visual contact, you know. And maybe if I'm not, and for sure it's because the film begins like that, with the look of the cow at the camera and at me and at the spectator. But after that, it was more a questioning about what is a life of an animal like that. Because most of the time when we see documentaries about animals, it's always with narrative that really create a story, like, you know, the story of the family of lions, and they have to find a food for their kids, and I mean, you know, this very anthropomorphic way of anthropomorphic, or like the animals have the same kind of narrative than us. They have a story with suspense, with all that kind of things. And looking at the cows, I realized that no, their life is not at all like that. There is no narrative that their daily life is based on eating, sleeping. I don't know the word for, you know, chewing, yes. But it doesn't mean that they don't have life. It doesn't mean that they have a very different life and a very different way of being in the present of life. And that was very interesting question, not philosophically, but cinematographically, because I wanted to represent something like that, to represent another way of being alive, or another way of what is life. And after that, I realized that there was no documentary at all about this kind of animals, about cattle. So I realized that all the films about animals were about wildlife, and that was so strange when I realized that we look at animals when they are very far, when we don't know who they are, but we don't look at what is so close to us. Because in France, and I think it can be different in different countries, but in France there are cows everywhere, not in the street, but when you go in the countryside. And so people think they know this animal, but no, they don't know anything at all. And what is different is it's very banal in a way, but what is interesting is to look at what is extraordinary or what is very different when you look at something close and not something far.
From a distance. Yeah, that's beautifully said. And one has a sense in watching this film that you were present almost as an anthropologist in addition to being a filmmaker. And by the way, you were also the cinematographer on this. You took the images in addition to directing it. But you really observe and invite viewers to observe with you all of the most ordinary events and happenings in the life of a cow. So there's a lot of time spent just on everyday activities, and a lot of time spent eating and chewing, and wonderful close-ups of the cows chewing their cud. And one of the most remarkable scenes is actually when the cow gives birth in the field. You have an image of a cow, and it just looks like she's resting. We're not quite sure initially what she's doing. And then all of a sudden, it becomes apparent that she's giving birth. And it seems like such a sort of almost unnoticed event. The other cows are just milling around doing their thing. And that is really a remarkable thing to be present for. Yeah.
And I have a remark about this because I know that some people, and even I didn't get one subsidy in France because of this scene, because someone said, no, they don't give birth like that, because they give birth with the help of the human. Because, and even me, I was surprised that it was outside in the field like that. And that's interesting because it shows how us as human, we don't see those animals as real animals. And because it's like we even forgot that, yes, they can give birth by themselves without the help of humans. And yes, they can, if they were free, they could live their life without us. That they don't need them. They don't need us. And I think it's very interesting because it surprised me also. And what is, you say that I was like an anthropologist, but for me, the way of filming was to rediscover what is scattering, what is breeding, like as if I was a child of someone who never heard about what it is. And all the process of the film is to see the cows as if they were wild animals, and to rediscover all the process, but putting myself on the side of the animals. And I've been surprised myself by what I discovered about them.
Mm-hmm. I want to come back and ask you what you discovered. What are some of the things you discovered? But just to continue on this this line of thinking, you really wanted to try to convey the cow's perspective rather than a human perspective on cows, especially seen from a distance. And so for example, there's no dialogue in the film. There's no voiceover narration telling us what we're observing or interpreting it in a certain way, which also means there's no attempt to put it into a story or a narrative, as you said. I don't think there's even any music through the film. When the sound is absolutely beautiful. There are sounds that you hear very, very close up, the sound of raindrops dropping on a puddle, the wind blowing through the grass, the cow chewing its cud. So the sound is really, really remarkable. And so I just wondered if you could tell us what are some of the choices that you made in filming and directing this film to further that perspective of seeing things from a cow's perspective rather than from a human perspective.
Yeah, exactly. All the choices of the point, the place where I was with my camera, the highness of the camera, the sound, all of that was to put the spectator into the perspective of not being a cow. It's impossible to be a cow, but to be with the cows and trying to recreate their universe, not their thinking, but and what I asked myself, okay, what cinema can do, and cinema, I think that can work with sensations. So what I was able to do is to recreate all the physical sensations, like you said, the wind, the feeling of the hotness of the sun, the humidity, the rain, but also the quality of the grass that they eat, because they choose this grass, not this grass, and it's very different to chew a humid grass or dry grass, and all that was very important, because I think that us as human, we can connect to the animal not by explaining them there. No, it's useful, but another way of connecting with animal is to feel, because we have also a body, we have also eyes and ears, and so we can feel physical sensations, and that's a way to connect with animals. So for example, when the cow is on the sun, and she put her face, I don't know if it's the right word, but her face on the grass and feeling the sun. I think for me it was very powerful when I was filming this scene, because I would really felt, oh yeah, that's good. That's good to be in the like this, and that's I think that the cinema is without words possible to connect with another way of living, and that's what I was saying. And it doesn't mean that to be a cow, but to okay, how would I feel if I was with them and with a lot of attention? So the way you talked about the sound, so yes, one way of recreating those kind of feelings, it's the sound. It's more important to have the sounds of material than the image. For example, if you film grass, you can't say if it's dry or if it's humid, but if you hear the sound, now you can know exactly how it is. And so the sound was very important. So I filmed most of the time I was alone, but I worked also with a sound engineer. So some days he was with me, and also he recorded a lot of close-ups. So after that, we added a lot of close-up to have the most rich sound in each with each image.
Yeah. So did your sound engineer record the sound while you were filming, or were some of the sounds recorded at a different time and added later in the editing process? How did that work?
Sometimes he was with me, but most of the time he was recording alone by himself, because it's, for example, to have a close-up, you have to be very close with the sound, with the boom to the object. So it was impossible to have close-up with the camera and with the sound. So we were spending, for example, 1 week together, but most of the time he was on this side and I was by my side.
Mm-hmm. And was that a decision that you made ahead of time before you started filming? Did you know that you didn't want to have a voiceover, you didn't want to have dialogue, you weren't going to incorporate music, and that shaped what you did all along?
Yeah. That was really the direct when I wrote the project, because we have to write the project to get funding. So yes, it was really part of it, because no voiceover, because as I explained, I didn't want to have an explanation. I want to question the spectator about that. I wanted to put the spectator in the position of asking himself, okay, what I am looking at, can I explain how they behave, or does it reminds me something, but I'm not sure that what I see is what I understand. And I think that if you begin to explain, you don't have you're not in the process of thinking and of feeling, because you have all the answers. So I wanted also to put the spectator in front of the extreme alien to a human. A cow, the way she walks, the way she looks at things, the way she goes from a direction to another, it's impossible to explain.
Yeah.
And that's what is interesting, because you begin to think, okay, I understand, and no, it's not that. So I think it's more interesting for a spectator to be in a place where, okay, no, I don't have to find all the common comprehension, but to accept that there is a big difference between you and something, someone else in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, create a sense of strangeness.
Exactly.
And therefore distance, and therefore curiosity about what that other experience is like. I was struck in terms of the choices you made about how to construct the film to convey things from the perspective of being with the cows. I think that the rhythm of the film is also works beautifully, because there's not a lot happening in the standard sense of the way movies are usually constructed, with action and plot and sequencing of things. And it's just a very slowed down rhythm. There are lots of long shots, close-up shots, and it really creates a sense of a very, very slowed down rhythm that we're not used to seeing in cinema. And I think that works really, really well. I felt like also another thing that struck me, in addition to the beauty of the sounds, the natural sounds that are included, you work a lot with textures in the way you photograph. So there's these wonderful textures of the close-up of the cow's hide, for example, or close-up of the mouth, or a mosquito, I think it was a mosquito, landing on the grass. And so there's also just a wonderful sense of texture in the movie. And the obviously the presence of the natural world and the elements is very almost like an actor in the film. And it has really a pastoral, almost a painterly quality, I think. And that's enhanced by the sense of rhythm that you are able to create. So it's really quite remarkable. What about the presence of people in the film? So I don't think we see a person until maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes before the end of the film. And yet, humans are present. I mean, obviously the animals, the cows are not living out in the wild. They're living in fenced in areas. And so they've got, tags in their ears. So it's clear that they are being raised by humans, but you don't see humans until 10 or 15 minutes before the end. And then of course, the last scene where their presence is felt most dramatically. So, and even there, you sort of hear people speaking very softly in the distance, but in the foreground, you still hear the cows mooing. And there's really a sense that the cows are communicating with each other when they're mooing, when it's like they're expressing a concern about what happened to the cows that have been taken away, or in one scene they're brought into a field by a trailer, and then one cow sort of goes off on her own, and then she's brought back, and you see the others kind of grouping around and almost speaking to her with cow's language. So was this one of the things that surprised you in terms of the kind of emotion and I don't know, what was being expressed by the cows when they were?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by the drama of this, of what was happening, that they really express how déchirant, how
upsetting,
how sad, how difficult is it, because it's like they see their child going away, taken away, and there are a lot of things that I discovered during the film. But I want to begin with what you said about the presence of the human, because I think it's very important. When I was saying that I wanted the film was, I wanted to rediscover what breeding is, but from the perspective of the animals. So it means for me that I wanted to spend time with the animals as if they were without humans, and like that, being with the herd, it means that it's a very big difference of perspective, because most of the film about cattling, breeding, and you are always with the farmers, and so it means that, for example, when there are humans and animals, you are with the farmer who goes to see the animals, and I wanted to be on the other side with the herd, and the humans are arriving. So it means that, and if you spend enough time with the animals, you feel the strangeness of the human, not of the animals. And that's what I wanted to create. But okay, but from the perspective from the animal, is it so strange to have your life with your friends, and suddenly people are coming to bring food or to take you away, to do things with you. And I thought, okay, from the perspective of an animal, it's like gods are coming, and sometimes it's to make us good, sometimes it's to make us very bad, and you don't have any control of that. And that's what I felt. And it's not a vision, it's political in a way, but for me it was more like, you know, in a way it was like a fantastic film. That means that the absurdity of all that, it's created by the cinema, because by spending time with the animals and looking at humans as a strange species that can control us. And so because of the so it at the end of the day, what I wanted to do is to look at the breeding, look at what is cattle breeding, I don't know the word, from the perspective of the animal. That's what I tried to say, to do. And doing that, I was surprised, because I discovered how they interact with each other, how they can have big pleasure eating apple, for example, how they express themselves when the child are taken. And most of all, because I knew nothing about that, for me the meat was coming from a herd, and when they have a certain age, they kill the herd. That's what. But what I discovered is that it's female cows that gave birth every year to a veal, and each year, or 9 months later, they are taken away. So the story at the end of the day, it's a story of a group of mothers that see their child taken away every year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why also I didn't want to follow the veal. I didn't want to look at everything, because the story was the story of this herd, of this group, and that's so dramatic and that's and it's that's what I discovered that doing the film, because at the beginning I had no idea of how it worked.
So that brings me to a question about did you have a political intent or a political message that you wanted to convey during this film? Do you think the film has a political message? I mean, there's sort of a whole subgenre now of films that are about, you know, the evils of the meat industry, and sort of advocating for vegetarianism. And so do you see this film as being in line with those kinds of films, or, you know, if so, how, and if not, how not? What's your feeling about?
Most of the films are about industrial breeding. Most of the films are a denunciation of this kind of agriculture, and that's important to have this kind of film. And but before the film, I read a lot, and I also read books about people who explain how that there is no ethically there is no way to accept because there is no breeding without animal suffering. But other books were trying to explain that there is an exchange that is possible in a way that human can give a good life to these animals, and in exchange they give their milk, their meat, and okay, it's not an equal exchange, but we can have something more ethic in that way. So I read a lot, and I had a lot of discussion after the film about that. But me, I didn't want to have a discourse like you have to think that way, because I wanted more that to put the spectator questioning himself and looking at, okay, what does that mean for you to eat the meat of another human, another living creature that have feelings, that is interesting, that is different from you, but this different doesn't mean something about suffering. No. And so I didn't want to that the spectator goes out from the cinema thinking, okay, I had a big hammer in my head to think that way. I wanted to put really to question the spectators, and me. I had the same question, because when I was making the film, I was eating meat, and I still eat meat, even if I mean, it's difficult, because after the film, after a lot of discussion, I began to be not vegan but vegetarian. And after that, I realized that, okay, there is no way to be just vegetarian. You have to be vegan if you really want to be engaged in this process. But after that, I mean, there is other way of thinking. I don't want to have an answer to that. The film is questioning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. And I see that we have several questions already, and I would have loved to ask you some more questions, but I am going to convey some of the questions from the audience, and then if we have time, I'll ask you a few more. Okay. We have Sue Ellen saying, thank you for every moment of your precious film. So thank you. One of the members of the audience is asking, where were the cows being herded at the end in the Eri segment?
Yeah.
And another question about, did you notice any hierarchy, I guess, among the cows? And if so, is it part of the film? So maybe you could start with those two questions.
Yeah. Okay, so to the first question, in fact, it's the veal are taken away from the cows, from the mothers, and they don't go directly to abattoir, to slaughterhouse.
Slaughterhouse, yeah.
Slaughterhouse. Now that they don't go directly to there. Before that, they go to a place where they can grow. They take the male, and they put them in a place where in stabulation, a place not in the fields, where they can grow, have more muscles. And after that, after 7 months or more of this growing, they are slaughtered. Okay. So it's not a happy life after that.
Yeah.
As I said, if I wanted to make a film very political with a very strong hammer
political message, yeah,
hammer messages, I would have shown that, but I felt it's not necessary. It's not the subject. It's not the subject of my film. Is about the cows, not about all the process. And the third question: did you notice any hierarchy? If that is it part of the film? Okay, no, I know there is. I know there is dominant cows. There are also leaders that can be different from the dominant, and also they are friends. We know that some cows like to go with another cow, and that's the only thing that is kind like shown in the film when they lick together. But no, I didn't want. I mean, I was not an ethologist. Is it the same word in English for the science of the behavior of the animal? In French, it's ethology. I don't know in English what it is.
Animal behavior.
Animal behavior. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I read a lot about animal behavior, especially cows, but I didn't want, because that was not exactly the subject of the film. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to show all the social interaction. For me, it was more like a metaphor of something, or an existential film about what is life when you are in a field without anything to do but eating and having your group with you, and not to enter in all the interaction that in the herd. So I asked myself this kind of question, but at the end of the day, also because it's very difficult to show this kind of things. And I'm not a scientist. I didn't enter in this kind of question.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another question about c'était tout simplement magnifique ce film. Combien d'heures de tournage? Merci beaucoup. So how many hours?
I don't remember exactly, but a lot, and a lot of same kind of things. That was a big problem during the editing because I have tons. I had tons of cows eating the grass, and like that in every kind of season, with sun, without, with rain, and I had so many images that just looked the same, and I had to construct the film with that. So the editing was quite hard to find the structure of the film, but I would say like 150 hours, something like that, and that's a lot, but that was necessary because I wanted a lot. For example, there is a shot, very simple, that with just you see grass and you see the head of the cow that goes directly in the middle of the frame. Yes. And it's very simple, but to do something like that, I had to take like 50 shots, because one time she was there, one time she was there, one time she was turning her head and she was too close to the camera. So, and all the time I was trying to know what kind of movement she will do, but it's it looks very easy, but it's very hard. You know?
Yes.
And there was a question in English, a long question I did.
Yes, so that question is, I have a question about the distance and inaccessibility of the animal world in your speech. How does this affect your other works? Is it the animal world only, or does this inaccessibility apply to other types of existence in front of a camera? What type of relationship or relationality do you suggest in the field of documentary filmmaking? How can we become the animals or the subject in front of the camera?
Can we become the animal or the subject in front of the camera? What type of relation? Yeah, that's a good question. If I understand it well, that's a good question. It means, is it only about animals that there is this kind of distance and inaccessibility? No, no, that's right. It's, I mean, with the cows and with animals in general, we have like a difference that there is an inaccessibility, but if it exists, does exist also with human, and a big part of documentary field is about looking at other human that can be very different because they are from another country, from another culture, but I think that this kind of distance does exist with someone with who you are very close, and there is always a big part of what you know about this person that is false, and a big part of her subjectivity. I mean, that's, I'm not saying something very new, but a big part, because we are all alone and we just know ourselves, really, and that's not new. But the documentary is about the relation that you can have with someone and trying to understand and to make exist his point of view or his way of looking at life, at things. And that's what is interesting for me, knowing that you can only understand by your eyes. So you can't be at her place, but you can only try to be closer to someone else, and with all the difficulties. So what type of relationality you suggest in the film? I don't understand the last question. Can we become the animal or the subject in front of the camera? I don't understand this question.
I'm not sure I entirely understand it either. But I think you tried to address the gist of the question. So maybe we can leave it at that, because we're soon running out of time, and I don't want to keep you longer than we said we would. Maybe 2 questions to end. Maybe you can tell us whether or not this time that you spent with this group of cows had an influence on how you approached other subjects having to do with human beings afterwards. Was there any carryover? And then maybe just tell us briefly what you're working on now.
Yes, as I said before, finally, because for example, the film that I shown in Colombia, 300 Men, was about homeless people in a homeless shelter, and it can seems cruel to compare, but the thing was that we were with people who had nothing to show themselves, and with a kind of nudity, and all the time I was trying to be accepted, and that's something that I learned from the cow, that what is important, it's not to convince people, it's just to be accepted. And with the animals, you are accepted or you are not. If you are not accepted, they go away. If you are accepted, they stay with you. And it's the same, and it's very simple, but it's the same thing with human. But with human, there is more complexity, because a lot of different interaction arrives, and a lot of different relations arrive, and it's more complicated. So I feel it's very more difficult to work with human than with animals. But I tried to approach the same way. It means that I'm trying to put myself in a way of feeling how they can feel. For example, in this homeless shelter, we spent like 6 months inside every day, not all the nights, not at all on the nights, but every day. So we felt what it was to spend so much time in a kind of prison, because it looks like a prison. And of course, I can't feel like a homeless person who has no hope about future, but I can, by the experience, begin to feel something, and that's a way of doing things. And the next project I'm working on, it's about in Europe there is a last primal forest. I'm not sure about the expression, but it means
primal forest.
Primal forest.
Primal forest, yeah.
Okay, it's in Poland. It's at the border of Poland and Belarusia, not Russia, but Belarusia. And it's a beautiful forest, but because of the refugee crisis, they created a frontier, like with Mexico. They do the same, like a wall in the forest to forbid people to come inside Europe. And so, but the dictator in Belarusia, he takes refugees from Afghanistan and anywhere, and he pushed them in the forest, saying, go to Europe. So the refugees are stuck in the forest, trying to survive in the forest, with Europe who say no, and the Belarusia who say go away. And so that's very, I mean, it's about, I don't know, now I will go there on Sundays. I have not been there, but it's like a really dystopic situation, and very, very difficult, and but very important, I think.
Yeah. So have you been there yet? And
no. I work with someone who have been there during the summer, but I will go there next Sunday for 3 weeks, and I will see by myself.
Yeah. Wow, it sounds like a really important, but I'm sure really disturbing subject.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Emmanuel, for this really, really beautiful film and for the other wonderful films that you've made. It's such a pleasure. And thanks for taking the time to join us. And we hope you can come back to see us in New York soon.
I hope.
All right. Thank you so much. Bonne continuation.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Bye.
Bye.